Bidian really did refuse to tell him and just kept him guessing. Yang Yi was full of curses. Endure it. Endure it. Yang Yi squeezed out a smile. Let's get back on topic. How do I deal with a space domain? Bidian glanced at Yang Yi. You can do it by force, Yang Yi asked. But what do I do if I can't find the person? Actually, he didn't fear the space domain, but the problem was that she refused to show herself. If that woman in a black dress refused to show herself, he would be helpless against her. That was the crux of the issue. The reason he'd come to Bidian was to find out if she had a way to locate the woman who was hiding in her space domain. Bidian put the ball down and went over to sit at the steps before the bamboo house. At your current level of strength, it's truly difficult to locate someone like that if that person is intent on hiding. Yang Yi remained silent. Was it really impossible to resolve? Meanwhile, Bidian continued. But there is a way. Yang Yi hurriedly asked. What is it? Bidian replied. I don't want to tell you. At this moment, Yang Yi felt like he was on the verge of madness. After all, she was just constantly refusing to tell him anything. He really was no match for her. Otherwise, he would definitely beat her up. At this moment, he felt that Arya was so cute. Yang Yi calmed himself. He knew he could use force against her. If he did, she would flare up, and once that happened, no one could stop her. Flatter her. Yang Yi walked over to Bidian and smiled. How about we play together once Arya and the others return? Arya is very fond of kicking balls around too. I can even get a few more others to join. It'll definitely be fun. Bidian thought for a moment and said, That does sound pretty good. Yang Yi hurriedly said, Of course, we'll split ourselves into 2 groups and see who wins. All right? She glanced at him and said, It's a pretty good idea. Yang Yi seemed to have thought of something and sighed softly while sitting at the side. Bidian asked, What's wrong? Yang Yi sighed softly. Sigh. I have so many things to do outside. A mysterious expert has been really troubling lately. I am afraid I won't have time to play. Bidian frowned slightly. That person with the space domain? Yang Yi nodded slightly. Yes. I'm so helpless against her. You're such a fool. Meanwhile, Bidian spoke abruptly. Don't you know how to lock down that expanse of space? Lock it down. Yang Yi gazed at her. What do you mean? Bidian spoke indifferently. I mean you should lock down this expanse of space. That person with the space domain can only temporarily escape the 3-dimensional universe. In other words, she has to return to this space, and when she does that, there will be changes in the space here. Perhaps others may not be able to discover those changes, but you possess the sword domain, so you can. She will be where the changes occur. Bidian suddenly stood up at this moment. Besides that, you can analyze the expanse of space she was last seen at. How? Use your sword domain. You may not be able to affect her, but you can destroy the space she was in. Once the space there is destroyed, you can use the fragments of space there to detect her aura. Understand? Yang Yi gazed at Bidian for quite some time, and then he nodded. I understand, I do. Bidian nodded slightly, and then she walked away. But right when she was about to enter the bamboo house, she suddenly said, Don't forget your promise. She entered the bamboo house. Meanwhile, Yang Yi hurried out of the primordial pagoda, the ancient sword sect. A few more disciples had been killed while Yang Yi had been in the primordial pagoda. Just like before, their head and headless bodies were at the foot of the mountain. Needless to say, news of this had spread throughout the sect. The disciples of the sect weren't afraid of going head-on against the experts of the soul sect. But the unknown was the most terrifying, because they couldn't even see their enemy. Panic had started to arise in the ancient sword sect. Once Yang Yi left the primordial pagoda, he immediately used the myriad world diagram to envelop the ancient sect, and then he covered the sect with his sword domain. Spatial fluctuations. Just as Bidian had told him, he was trying to look for spatial fluctuations. So long as there was a slight fluctuation in space throughout the sect, he would sense it clearly. Just like that, time passed by. 2 hours later, Yang Yi grinned, and then he vanished on the spot. Yang Yi appeared out of thin air at the abode of a disciple. Meanwhile, a shrill cry resounded within the courtyard. Yang Yi waved his right hand. The door swung open, and the disciple within had his head separated from his body. But the room was empty beyond the corpse. A ferocious grin curled up on Yang Ye's face, and then he stomped his right foot down. Bang! The space he resided at instantly exploded apart and transformed into a black hole, and then he vanished on the spot. A ray of light flashed through the black hole. Bang! Something seemed to be torn open in that black hole, and then a figure appeared there. It was the woman in a black dress from the Soul Sect. She stared at Yang Yi. "How did you locate me?" Yang Yi scanned her and said, "I was right. It is you." She laughed coldly. "So what if you have discovered my presence?" As soon as she finished speaking, her figure gradually turned ethereal. "You think you can escape?" Yang Yi laughed coldly, and then a wave of powerful energy enveloped the surroundings. It was the sword domain. An instant later, rays of sword energy crisscrossed. These rays of sword energy just attacked everything in the area to destroy everything here, including the dark matter and space. Because while the woman could use her space domain to escape three-dimensional space, she didn't have the ability to enter four-dimensional space. In other words, she would have to return to three-dimensional space. Yet now, his random attacks had just one objective, and it was to destroy everything in the area. Sure enough, Yang Ye's crazy wave of destruction forced her to counterattack, and a mysterious ray of black light appeared abruptly. Bam! An explosion resounded and Yang Yi was blasted backward. It didn't take long for the space before him to surge, and then it rippled toward him in waves. At the same time, Yang Yi sensed a strand of pressure. It was a powerful wave of pressure coming from the surrounding space. Obviously, this space wasn't the three-dimensional space, or to be more precise, it wasn't entirely three-dimensional space. There was some other type of space here. Yang Yi closed his eyes slowly. Suppression. At this moment, he was using the sword domain to suppress the space with everything he had. As he suppressed it, the space here gradually calmed down, but the energy still remained. Two types of domains were clashing. The woman was hidden while Yang Yi was out in the open. A long time passed like this before Executor suddenly left the sheath by Yang Ye's waist and shot up into the air. Hiss! Sharp sounds of something being sliced open resounded. Bang! An explosion resounded, and then the dark matter and space here exploded apart. At the center of it all, Yang Yi and the woman in a black dress were both impacted by the powerful aftershock from it. Both of them were blasted away, and they flew over 3 kilometers away. At this moment, they were both in the sky above the sect. They stood in confrontation from afar. A wisp of blood seeped out from the corner of her mouth. At this moment, she wanted to flee, but it was impossible. Because besides the experts of the ancient sword sect, there were 4 other women down below. Nether Maiden's group. At this moment, all of them were looking at her. They hadn't received Yang Ye's approval, so they refused to interfere in the battle between Yang Yi and the woman. But if she tried to flee, they would stop her. Besides the myriad world diagram and the sword domain, Boundary Maiden's barrier had locked down the surroundings too. It was a complete lockdown just so that the woman couldn't escape. The space domain was unlike the sword domain. It was much more mysterious, and it was especially when it came to escape and concealment. If she hadn't attacked again earlier, he wouldn't have been able to locate her. Even if his sword domain covered the entire sect, there would be no spatial fluctuations while she remained perfectly still. Unfortunately, she was too confident about her space domain. She knew Yang Yi had activated his sword domain to locate her. Yet she'd still decided to kill someone. In the sky above the ancient sword sect, she glanced coldly at the experts down below and looked at Yang Yi. She ridiculed, "Sect Master Yi, are you going to gang up on me?" "Gang up on you?" Yang Yi shook his head slightly. "Is that even necessary?" She laughed coldly. "Then how about we fight one-on-one until one of us dies? One-on-one." Yang Yi chuckled. "All right, let's do it. However, you won't be leaving this sect no matter what. Your head must be used as an offering for those dead disciples." "You want my head?" Her cold smile gradually widened, and she pointed at her own head. My head is right here. Come take it if you can. As soon as she finished speaking, Yang Yi vanished on the spot. Hiss! A ray of sword energy tore through the space above the ancient sword sect, and powerful sword intent and sword energy rippled through the sky. In the air above the ancient sword sect, the woman's figure gradually turned ethereal, and then the space around her surged. An instant later, a wave of powerful energy rippled out through the sky. Meanwhile, Yang Ye's sword arrived. Hiss! Bang! In the sky above the sect, an ear-piercing explosion resounded, and then that expanse of space was obliterated beneath Yang Ye's attack. After that, a figure was blasted out of there. It was the woman in a black dress. Force. Yang Yi chose to use force to overcome her space domain. Any domain, even his own, could be destroyed by force. All it took was a sufficiently strong attack. At this moment, Yang Yi was at the five-world realm, and he'd improved in every aspect. Coupled with the face that he was using Executor, his full strength could destroy her space domain without facing too much difficulty. A single attack destroyed her domain. In the sky above the ancient sword sect, the woman stopped around 1 kilometer away from where she'd been. Her countenance was pale. Her entire body had cracked open, and blood was spraying from her. Getting one's domain destroyed was a very harmful thing. She looked up at Yang Yi. You've much stronger than before. Much stronger. When she fought Yang Yi the other day, while Yang Ye's strength wasn't bad, it wasn't as strong as it was right now. Yang Yi couldn't be bothered to waste his breath on her, and he just charged at her. A single attack. Bang! That expanse of space before Yang Yi was instantly obliterated, and the woman was blasted away from within it. She flew all the way out of the ancient sword sect, but she was still within the scope of the myriad world diagram. However, the myriad world diagram was utterly incapable of trapping her because she possessed the space domain. Meanwhile, the woman didn't try to fight Yang Yi to the death. At the instant she'd been blasted away, her figure flashed and used space to teleport into the sky. How could Yang Yi allow her to escape? 2 flying swords shot out from Yang Ye's waist. Far away in the sky, 2 rays of sword energy flashed, and then the woman was forced to a stop. Meanwhile, Yang Yi appeared before her and swung his sword. 13 overlap swings with the sword domain. That expanse of the sky was instantly obliterated before it. The woman's pupils constricted. This attack had shattered the space throughout the surroundings, and that was no different than shattering the foundation of her space domain. But she didn't wait for death to arrive. Her eyes narrowed slightly, and then her body exploded apart. An instant later, a powerful wave of soul energy surged out like a volcanic eruption. Boom! The powerful wave of soul energy instantly blasted Yang Yi away. She didn't attack again and just shot off into the sky. She detonated her body to execute that attack, so only her soul remained now. Thus, it was impossible for her to defeat Yang Yi, who was holding a super divine treasure. Flee! She didn't try to fight him to the death. Staying alive was most important. Unfortunately, she forgot that she was within the ancient sword sect's territory. So, she hadn't even gone 300 m away before a woman appeared in front of her. It was Nether Maiden. Nether Maiden gazed at her. Didn't you want a one-on-one battle? The woman gazed coldly at Nether Maiden. You believed a lie like that? She crushed a black talisman once she finished speaking. Boom! A powerful aura swept out from within her, and then an ethereal shadow appeared in front of her. The woman glanced coldly at Nether Maiden and the others. We'll meet again very soon. As soon as she finished speaking, she vanished into the sky. Yang Yi and Nether Maiden were about to stop her when the ethereal figure suddenly raised its hands. Bang! The entire sky started revolving strangely, and then rays of powerful soul energy erupted from that strange expanse of space. At this moment, the entire ancient sword sect was severely affected. If Sword Scroll hadn't quickly activated the sect's formations, it would have been obliterated by now. Just like that, the energy surged for around 10 minutes before the sky gradually calmed down again. At this moment, Yang Yi and Nether Maiden were standing side by side. Both of them weren't in a very good state. Especially Yang Yi, his entire body had cracked open. Nether Maiden was in a comparatively better state because she'd been standing behind Yang Yi just now. A long time passed before Yang Yi's body gradually recovered, and he gazed at Nether Maiden. "Are you all right?" She shook her head slightly and looked into the distance. The ethereal figure was gone. Nether Maiden said, "That figure's main body is even stronger." Yang Yi nodded. The main body of that figure may even be the Soul Sect's master, and even if it wasn't the Soul Sect's master, it was definitely an extremely terrifying existence. The Soul Sect was very strong. They returned to the sect. Yang Yi returned to his abode because Sword Scroll and Elder Gu Nan were there to deal with the sect's affairs. Yang Yi went back into the primordial pagoda. This time he felt that he was still lacking. Or it should be said that he needed to grow stronger. Yang Yi went to the bamboo house to see Chi Bidian. At this moment, Chi Bidian wasn't playing with her ball, and she was playing Gamoku with Lei Lin instead. They were having an absolute blast. Lei Lin was very happy to see Yang Yi, and she immediately abandoned the game and went over to grab Yang Yi's hand. Chi Bidian glanced at Yang Yi with displeasure. "Why is this guy so annoying? He's disturbing my game." Yang Yi rubbed Lei Lin's head, and then he led her over to Chi Bidian and smiled. "Continue your game. Go on." He knew that he couldn't interrupt Chi Bidian's fun. That young girl did everything based on her mood. If her mood was good, she would be willing to help him with anything. But if her mood was foul, she would help with nothing and may even beat him up. Lei Lin sat before Chi Bidian. Suddenly, Yang Yi spoke with surprise. "Whoa! Gamoku! You actually know how to play it." Chi Bidian glanced at Yang Yi. "Do you?" Yang Yi replied seriously. "Of course. Before I stepped onto the path of cultivation, my dream was to become a great master of Go. Moreover, I planned to hold a Gamoku tournament in that world of ours. Unfortunately, I had to step onto the path of cultivation in order to survive." "Sigh! A Gamoku tournament?" Chi Bidian blinked. "One that many people will play together?" Yang Yi nodded. "Yes." She spoke softly. "That should be quite fun." Yang Yi spoke seriously. "Of course. Anyway, you seem really good. How about we play a game?" Chi Bidian glanced at Yang Yi. "Let's play." Yang Yi nodded and started playing with her. It was a truly intense game between them. In the beginning, it was a very aggressive battle, but Yang Yi was always a step behind at the end and lost to her. Every time that happened, Chi Bidian would smile like a child. Finally, after losing 8 times, Yang Yi sat at the side in dejection. Meanwhile, Lei Lin blinked. She felt that something was off because Chi Bidian's skill was terrible. Chi Bidian couldn't even defeat her. Lei Lin wondered if it was because she was an amazing player. Thinking of that made her extremely happy. Meanwhile, when she saw the dejection on Yang Yi's face, Chi Bidian consoled. "Don't be like that. You're very good too." Yang Yi sighed softly. "Not as good as you." Chi Bidian smiled brilliantly while revealing undisguised complacency. As if she couldn't bear to strike another blow to his confidence, she hurriedly restrained her smile and consoled him again. "Your talent isn't bad. If you work hard, you'll have a chance at defeating me." Yang Yi sat up and said, "You're right. I must work hard. All right, let's continue." Chi Bidian was naturally pleased with that. So they started again. It was a close battle, but Yang Yi was still a step behind and lost. This time, he didn't get dejected. He continued playing with Chi Bidian, but he still lost. Chi Bidian was smiling from ear to ear. After countless games, Yang Yi suddenly spoke casually. "Little Chi, can you help me with something?" They had gotten closer through these games. Previously, he called her senior, and she didn't really like that method of address. So, she told him to call her Little Chi instead. Chi Bidian was in a very good mood and didn't even hesitate to ask, "What is it?" Yang Yi withdrew Executor and placed it by the Go board, and then he spoke casually. "This sword was sealed, and so its strength isn't fully released. I'm very weak and unable to undo the seal. Can you help me instead?" "Of course. We can continue playing if you think it's too difficult." As he spoke, he snuck a glance at her and was rather nervous. Chi Bidian glanced at the sword. Her gaze stopped on it for a moment, and then she put down another piece while she said, "Little Yang, this sword isn't bad." Yang Yi replied humbly, "It's just ordinary." As soon as it heard Yang Yi, Executor trembled and seemed to be expressing its dissatisfaction. Yang Yi was stunned speechless. Chi Bidian glanced at the sword again and said, "It's not bad." She put down another piece and chuckled, "You've lost again." Yang Yi immediately had dejection all over his face, and it seemed as if he'd failed to advance into the Lord Realm. Chi Bidian couldn't bear to see him like that, so she picked up Executor and said, all right, I'll help you unseal it." She pressed her index and middle fingers together before tapping them on Executor's blade. Bang! A powerful wave of sword intent and sword energy erupted. The sword intent and sword energy erupted in all directions, but Chi Bidian waved her hand a moment later, and all of that powerful sword intent and sword energy vanished without a trace. Meanwhile, Chi Bidian tapped Executor, and the latter shook violently. Quite some time passed before Executor gradually calmed down. "Huh!" Suddenly, Chi Bidian spoke with surprise. "Interesting." Yang Yi hurriedly asked, "What is it?" Chi Bidian replied, "The person who sealed this sword of yours is quite strong." Yang Yi was stunned speechless. Chi Bidian scanned Executor and said, "I've undone this sword's seal. However, there's still 10% to be unsealed. It only has 90% of its strength right now. What about the final 10%? Yang Yi was stunned, and he asked, "Can it be unsealed?" She shook her head. "It can't." Yang Yi was puzzled. "Why?" She pointed at the tip of the sword. The tip was broken. She said, "This is where this sword's strength is greatest, and it has been sealed. But the person who placed that seal isn't the previous owner of this sword." Yang Yi asked, "Then who was it?" Chi Bidian shook her head. "I don't know. Moreover, I can sense that person didn't just seal that part of the sword. That person even broke off the sword's tip. This sword would be quite amazing if its tip was still intact. But now, while it's not a lousy sword, it's just ordinary. However, it's all right for you. If it's in my hands, I wouldn't even use it. It's too inferior." Yang Ye's face darkened, and he wondered if she knew how to speak. After all, it was such an insult. Yang Yi endured it. Chi Bidian placed the sword on the table. "I can help you unseal the last 10%, but this sword's strength is mostly at its tip. If I unseal that, you won't be able to control it. At that time, you'll be in for some suffering when your sword is much stronger than you." His sword would be much stronger than him. Yang Yi picked up Executor, and as soon as he did that, he sensed that there was something different about it. As for what exactly was different, Yang Yi couldn't put a finger on it. However, it was clearly much stronger than before. Or it should be said that he was much stronger than before now. Yang Yi put the sword away and said, "All right, let's continue with our game." Chi Bidian smiled when she heard him. In the beginning, she'd thought that Yang Yi was merely playing with her for the sake of getting her to help him. But now, she felt that Yang Yi must really like playing. Little Yang isn't bad at all. That was what Chi Bidian thought. Just like that, Yang Yi played with Chi Bidian for over 2 hours. During this time, he'd casually asked her some questions. In short, after these games with her, he'd benefited tremendously. In the end, when he noticed that she didn't really feel like continuing, Yang Yi hurriedly proposed they continue another day, and she happily agreed to it. Just like that, Yang Yi left the primordial pagoda. Outside the pagoda, Yang Yi wiped off the sweat on his face. It was truly tiring. It was more tiring than fighting a drawn-out battle. In his abode, Yang Yi gazed at Executor. There was a wisp of sword energy flowing slowly around its blade, but it would turn around upon arriving before its tip. Yang Yi fell silent for a short while, and then his sword intent surged into it. In an instant, a sword howl resounded through the ancient sword sect. At this moment, all the sword cultivators of the sect looked in the direction of Yang Ye's abode. In the abode, Executor shook violently in Yang Ye's grasp and seemed like it was about to pierce through the sky. It was extremely aggressive. If the sword seemed dead and silent in the past, then it was sharp and aggressive now. Besides that, Yang Yi noticed that it was actually quite strenuous for him to hold it now. It was strenuous. Yang Yi was shocked in his heart. Obviously, this sword was gradually revealing its true strength. Fortunately, Chi Bidian hadn't fully unsealed it. Otherwise, he may not be able to control it. Once it was stronger than him, their roles would be flipped. Yang Yi put it away, left his abode, and went to the meeting hall of the ancient sword sect. There were only 2 people here, Sword Scroll and Gu Nan. Yang Yi sat down and asked, "Has the Soul Sect taken any action lately?" Sword Scroll nodded. "Yes. A mysterious barrier has appeared in an area of 500 kilometers around our sect." A mysterious barrier? Yang Yi frowned slightly. "What barrier?" Sword Scroll shook her head. "We don't know yet. So, let's go have a look." Yang Yi nodded, and then they left the hall and went outside the sect. Yang Yi looked up into the sky. The area 500 kilometers away from the sect was pitch black. He glanced at the surroundings, and he noticed that it was the same in all directions around the sect. Yang Yi spoke indifferently. "They plan to lock us down here." Sword Scroll nodded. "Indeed, they don't want any of us to leave. Moreover, my intuition tells me that they seem to be waiting." Yang Yi gazed at her. "Waiting?" Sword Scroll nodded. "They are definitely waiting. I just don't know what they are waiting for. But I have no doubt that once the time comes, they will launch the fiercest attack that they can." Yang Yi gazed at the darkness in the surroundings, and a short while passed before he withdrew the universe seal. It soared up slowly, and then a strand of mysterious energy rippled out from it. The universe seal could destroy any barrier and formation. Even though it was a little too exaggerated, he had no doubt it could break open barriers and formations. However, the energy emanated by the universe seal hadn't even arrived before the darkness when a strand of powerful energy obliterated it. Yang Yi frowned at the sight of this. What the heck was that? A moment of silence ensued, and then Yang Yi flicked a strand of sword energy into the sky. It entered the darkness in the distance, but it didn't even cause the slightest fluctuation in the barrier. Not even the slightest change had occurred. What the hell? Yang Yi frowned, and then he activated the universe seal again. It transformed into a ray of light that shot toward the darkness. But it only took a moment for Yang Ye's expression to change drastically while he hurriedly summoned the universe seal back to him. Because when the universe seal shot over there, the darkness had condensed, and then a black awl emerged from within it. A super divine treasure. Yang Yi had come into contact with it in the past. It had almost shattered his universe seal. Sword Scroll spoke solemnly. "It's being protected by a super divine treasure." Yang Yi nodded. "Looks like they are getting serious. All right, let me see if their super divine treasure is powerful or is mine." He was about to head over, but Sword Scroll stopped him. Sword Scroll shook her head. "Don't risk it." Gunan chimed in. "Sword Scroll is right. Don't rashly take risks. You're linked to the survival of our entire sect. If anything were to happen to you, our sect would be forced to submit without even trying to fight back." Yang Yi glanced at the darkness in the distance. He did sense danger coming from it. He knew that the Soul Sect was really serious about this attack. Suddenly, Yang Ye's expression changed slightly. The space before him shook, and then an ethereal figure appeared in front of him. Yang Ye's eyes narrowed slightly while sword intent rippled out from him, and it enveloped the ethereal figure. "Sect Master Yang, don't attack me." The ethereal figure swiftly said, "I'm not from the Soul Sect." Yang Yi sized up the ethereal figure and withdrew his sword intent. The figure cupped its fist at Yang Yi and said, "I'm a death guard of the desolate race. Greetings, young Master Yang." A desolate death guard. Yang Yi was slightly stunned, and then he asked, "You're from the desolate race?" The ethereal figure nodded. "A desolate death guard. The junior patriarch wished to ask you if everything is all right." Yang Yi shook his head slightly. "Not really," the death guard said. "Is it because of the Soul Sect?" Yang Yi nodded. The death guard said, "Shall we speak someplace else?" Yang Yi nodded and brought the death guard to his abode. Yang Yi glanced at the death guard and asked, "What are you doing here?" The death guard replied, "Our race may not be an eternal kingdom, but we do know quite a bit about what's happening here. Our junior patriarch sent me here immediately upon hearing about the situation you're in." Yang Ye's eyes lit up. "To help me?" The death guard shook his head. "He wants you to leave the ancient sword sect." Yang Yi was puzzled. "Why?" The death guard said, "Young Master Yang, the soul sect isn't ordinary, and taking over the ancient sword sect isn't something they are doing on their own. It's something the entire Eternal Kingdom is doing together. Simply speaking, the people at the top of Eternal Kingdom agreed to this because it is aligned with their interests, and it's for the sake of fighting my desolate race. So they won't stop. If it's necessary, those people at the top of Eternal Kingdom will personally help the soul sect. If you stay here, it's equivalent to going against the entire Eternal Kingdom." Yang Yi fell silent for a short while and said, "How much do you know about the soul sect?" The death guard hesitated for a moment and replied, "We know a little. It's a mysterious organization that once disturbed the interests of some existences in Eternal Kingdom. Thus, they were punished and forced into hiding. But this time, they are being smart about it and are doing as some powers desire. So, they were allowed to emerge into the world once more. Moreover, they convinced the others to divide up the ancient sword sect. Young Master Yang, the junior patriarch said that you should leave the ancient sword sect immediately and not get involved in this. Otherwise, it'll only lead to death." Death. In the abode, Yang Yi closed his eyes slowly. "Go back and tell him I appreciate his intentions." The death guard hesitated for a moment and sighed softly. He withdrew a scroll and pitch-black command token, placed them before Yang Yi and said, "The junior patriarch said that if you refuse to leave, then these should be given to you. He said that they may be of use to you. Farewell." He turned around and vanished. Yang Yi gazed silently at the two items before him. Yang Yi unfurled the scroll, and within it were some of the secret organizations the desolate race possessed in Eternal Kingdom. The desolate race had left these organizations behind very, very long ago. They usually stayed away from the Eternal Kingdom's business and merely served the desolate race. Now Yang Yi could use them too, because the pitch-black command token before him was a desolate token that was comparable to being in the presence of their junior patriarch. Yang Ye's heart felt warm as he gazed at the command token. He didn't refuse this kindness because he really needed help right now. Yang Yi put the command token and scroll away, and then he left his abode. In the ancient sword sect. Along with Yang Ye's arrival, the entire sect seemed to have found its pillar of support and gradually calmed down. However, the atmosphere here in the sect was still heavy and tense, because all the disciples were aware that the sect had been sealed up by the soul sect. Now they couldn't leave and could only wait here. Wait slowly until the attack arrived. They were quite lost when it came to the future. Actually, Yang Yi was rather lost too. Yang Yi went to the sect's main hall, and a huge statue stood there. It was the statue of a middle-aged man with a sword in his grasp. It was the sect's founder. As for the founder's name and strength, it was all unknown, because it had been too long. Not to mention the current disciples, even Sword Scroll didn't know. But she wasn't entirely without any knowledge on him. Sword Scroll spoke softly. According to rumor, he wandered the world and merged the sword Daos of them all. And then he created his own sword Dao. So that sword cultivators wouldn't fall into a decline, he created a sword sect. Unfortunately, for some reason, there are no records of what happened during his time. She gazed at Yang Yi. That young girl in the pagoda, Chibidian, should be one of the few who are aware of what happened during those ancient times. Chibidian. Yang Yi felt quite speechless when he thought of her. Gamoku and soccer. She was especially fond of those two things. I shouldn't have made you take over of this mess. Sword Scroll spoke abruptly. I'm sorry. I never expected it to turn out like this. Sword Scroll felt extremely guilty about the situation Yang Yi was in right now. She was a huge reason why he was the ancient sword sect's master right now. Yang Yi smiled. Don't blame yourself. I accepted this responsibility, and it has nothing to do with you. Moreover, I've been wandering the world for so many years, and it's the first time I've had such a prestigious position. The ancient sword sect's master. It's a very precious title. She glanced at him and remained silent. Yang Yi looked up at the sky. He could still say the expanse of darkness from here. The entire ancient sword sect was surrounded by that expanse of darkness. Yang Yi grinned and said, "Help me summon all the sect's disciples." Sword Scroll glanced at Yang Yi and left. Around 10 minutes later, all the sect's disciples were before Yang Yi. The 11 elite disciples led the ground, and Gunya was leading the elite disciples. Yang Yi even saw Emoya, Lu Yunxian, and the others among the disciples. Yang Yi stood there with his sword in hand as he glanced at them. "I'm sure you're aware about the situation out there, so I won't keep it from you. Yes, the Soul Sect has sealed off the area. That area is being protected by a super divine treasure, so I can't break it open for now." They fell silent. Yang Yi smiled. "Are you afraid?" Sword howls resounded. They were filled with the desire to fight. It was their answer to his question. Yang Yi grinned. "That's good to know, because we may die in the upcoming battle. I'm not lying, any one of us may die. What I want from you is to remember that we will die. However, we must take someone with us before that happens. Even if our sect is going to vanish from the eternal kingdom, we must tell the world that we are no cowards, and we will die on our feet." The disciples' blood started to boil when they heard him. Not cowards. They were sword cultivators, and as far as sword cultivators were concerned, there were only broken swords, no bent swords. If they surrendered, their swords would have to bend, and they would never be able to stand up straight again as sword cultivators. Fight to the death. Yang Yi didn't lie to them and say the ancient sword sect would definitely win, nor did he say something like good would triumph over evil. He was very frank and told them they may die. Fight to the death. Yang Ye's objective was simply, he wanted them to fight to the death and perhaps pave a way through. If they weren't even afraid of death, there would be nothing in this world that could make them hesitate to fight. If they were fearless, they would be unmatched. As he gazed at these sword cultivators, Yang Yi suddenly understood a little. He understood why he'd stayed. Trust. These disciples and all the other elders who stayed behind had put their trust in him. Even though many knew that his ascension to the position of sect master was just a scheme plotted by the Grand Elders group, they still chose to stay and take his side. It was because they trusted him. Trust. This group of people trusted him. Just like this very moment, if he asked them to fight the Soul Sect to the death, they wouldn't hesitate to do it. Meanwhile, Gunya suddenly walked over to Yang Yi. Yang Yi glanced at Gunya. Needless to say, he was a genius in the sword Dao, and he was one of the few elite disciples in the sect who could kill Lord Realm experts. Gunya looked Yang Yi in the eyes. "If a war breaks out again, will you flee?" "Flee." Everyone gazed at Yang Yi. They knew Yang Ye's strength well. In the entire sect, there were a few who could avoid the war and survive, like Yang Yi, Gunan, and the other Lord Realm experts. If they focused on escaping, they had a very good chance at success. Yang Yi glanced at Gunya and smiled. "I won't." Gunya gazed at Yang Yi for a long time and said, "From this moment onward, my life is yours, and I will do anything you ask of me." The ancient sword sect. The sect was home to many disciples, especially those who grew up here. This was truly their home. Many of them were willing to give up their lives to protect this home of theirs. It was a form of responsibility, and it was something the ancient sword sect had taught them from a young age, but it was no form of brainwashing. After all, independent cultivators usually suffered in universes like the Eternal Kingdom. A sense of belonging. They had a strong sense of belonging to the ancient sword sect. Yang Yi glanced at Gunya and grinned. "So you didn't acknowledge me as the sect master before this?" Gunya spoke frankly. "Yes, I felt you would leave sooner or later." Yang Yi smiled. "Then what about now?" Gunya replied. "I was wrong, and so were the Grand Elder and the others. We, the disciples of the ancient sword sect, would rather die than surrender to the Soul Sect." Yang Yi nodded slightly. "Everyone has their own choices to make." Gunya glanced at the distant sky and fell silent. After that, Yang Yi returned to his abode and entered the primordial pagoda. Cultivate. As far as he was concerned, no matter what the soul sect did next, all he could do was cultivate, work hard on growing stronger, and then face the soul sect's attack. Of course, he always spent some time playing Gamoku and soccer with Chi-Bidian. He had to grab tightly to such a great source of support. As for Chi-Bidian, she grew increasingly fond of Yang Yi, and would sometimes take the initiative to guide him. Chi-Bidian's guidance was absolutely beneficial to Yang Yi. As for the two fruits before the bamboo house, Yang Yi acted like he hadn't noticed them. He couldn't do anything about it. Moreover, he didn't want to do anything, because he noticed that her presence was very beneficial to them. Chi-Bidian had the ability to help them grow too. However, unlike Snowy, her ability was to help them improve on a certain aspect. For example, creating a new type of space without any restraints that allowed them to grow freely. Simply speaking, they had no upper limits. As for Snowy, her ability was to improve their speed of growth. In short, it was very beneficial to keep Chi-Bidian happy. Outside the pagoda, the Soul Exalt gazed coldly at the ancient sword sect standing in the distance and smiled coldly. The woman in a black dress was by his side. A short while passed before the Soul Exalt glanced at her. Ying, I told you not to act arbitrarily. You refused to believe me, and so you suffered, right? Her face was icy cold as she remained silent. The Soul Exalt shook his head. Just stand on guard here. Ying suddenly asked, when are we attacking? The Soul Exalt glanced at the distant sky. If nothing unexpected happens, we'll be starting immediately. He turned around and left. A short while later, the Soul Exalt appeared in the sky. He closed his eyes slowly and said, show yourself. Once I'm done with you, it'll be the ancient sword sect's turn. He planned to deal with the person supporting Yang Yi. It was why he still hadn't acted against the ancient sword sect. Their goal was to first deal with Yang Ye's support. Meanwhile, footsteps arose from behind him. The Soul Exalt said, it's time to put an end to this. A voice came from behind him. Allow me to be honest. I can crush 10 of you with one hand. Along with the voice, a petite young girl appeared behind the Soul Exalt. The woman had her hands behind her back, a calm expression on her face, and absolute indifference in her eyes. The Soul Exalt turned around and gazed at her, and his eyes narrowed slightly. What's your name? She walked over to him. Didn't you want to kill me? I'm right here. The Soul Exalt looked at the girl before him, and then he suddenly raised his right hand and pressed it down lightly in her direction. In an instant, strands of powerful aura of the soul rippled out from his palm. Moreover, 2 other black-robed experts of the soul sect appeared not too far behind her. They were the black-robed experts who'd hunted Yang Yi that day. At the instant the Soul Exalt attacked, they vanished on the spot. Bang! Bang! 2 powerful aura of the soul swept out through space, and their target was the young girl. The young girl just stood there with indifference on her face. It didn't take long for 3 auras to envelop her. Bang! A moment of silence ensued, and then an explosion resounded. After that, the auras were obliterated while a ray of dark light rippled out through that expanse of space. Hiss! 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 Horrifying sounds of something being torn apart resounded. Space was torn open, inch by inch. At this moment, the Soul Exalt and the others' expressions changed drastically, and the dark light was already in front of them. Rumble! Along with 3 explosions, they were blasted away. All resistance was futile before that dark light. It crushed everything. The Soul Exalt stared at the young girl. Who are you? Terror. At this moment he felt slight terror. She walked slowly in his direction. Didn't you want to kill me? Why don't you try? A wisp of viciousness flashed through his eyes, and then his body exploded apart. Only his soul remained. In this state, his aura grew even more fearsome. The Soul Exalt raised his right hand slightly and pressed it down in her direction. Bang! A powerful and towering soul palm crashed down from above. The powerful might it emanated made it seem like the sky itself was collapsing. It was extremely shocking. The young girl didn't even look up. She just waved her hand casually, and a ray of dark light rippled out. Bang! The soul exalt and the others watched with astonishment as the palm was blasted into bits. Meanwhile, the soul exalt had transformed into a ray of powerful black light that shot at her. Her face remained indifferent. She took a small step forward when it arrived before her, and a ray of mysterious dark light enveloped her body. As soon as the black light touched the dark light, it was like snow that instantly melted in hot oil. She stretched out her right hand and made a clawing motion, and she instantly grabbed the soul exalt's throat. The surroundings fell silent. The soul exalt had been utterly overpowered. The soul exalt stared at the young girl. "Who the heck are you?" She didn't answer him. She was just about to squeeze down when a ray of strange energy descended from the distant sky. She frowned slightly, and then her soul actually left her body. However, along with a ray of dark light that shot up into the air, her soul returned once more into her body. However, the soul exalt had fled over 1 kilometer away. She ignored the soul exalt and looked up at the sky. A voice came slowly from there. "You've broken the rules." The rules. In order to maintain some kind of balance, Eternal Kingdom prohibited some experts from fighting. Obviously, her strength was sufficient to meet the standards of that restriction. "The rules?" She laughed coldly. "You want to talk about the rules now?" Meanwhile, a blurry black shadow appeared in the sky, and there was a pitch black all floating by its side. A super divine treasure. The soul exalt and the others hurriedly bowed respectfully upon seeing the blurry figure. Obviously, it was the soul sect's master. A short while passed before the soul sect's master spoke abruptly. "You're from the other side." She gradually floated up into the air, and it didn't take long for her to stand before him. "That isn't important," the soul sect's master said. Everyone agreed to the attack on the ancient sword sect and supported it. Everyone. The everyone here naturally represented all the peak experts of Eternal Kingdom. The young girl laughed coldly. "So what? Why don't all of you join forces and see if you can kill me?" The soul sect's master fell silent. Kill her? If they joined forces, it was possible, it was definitely possible. But the problem was whether they would. Killing an expert like this would definitely result in them suffering severe injuries or even death. It wouldn't be that bad if they succeeded at killing her. But if they failed, then once an expert like this ignored the rules and acted willfully, then it would definitely bring chaos to Eternal Kingdom. The ancient sword sect had remained safe before this because it had such an expert, the previous sect master. So long as he remained alive, the powers of Eternal Kingdom and the soul sect wouldn't dare to act rashly. A living expert at that level was an extraordinary threat. Once such an expert stopped abiding by the rules and hunted their disciples, how would they stop an expert like that? So, the soul sect hadn't touched the ancient sword sect until now. Once the previous sect master of the ancient sword sect perished, the soul sect had nothing to fear anymore, and neither did the other powers in the area. All of them started to take action. However, they hadn't expected an unexpected change in the situation like Xianxia. That wasn't even the biggest problem. The biggest problem was this young girl. Yet now they had already launched the attack, so it was impossible for them to stop just because she wanted it. A short while later, the soul exalt said, "How about we allow the younger generation to deal with these issues? We of the older generation will stay out of it. They will decide the outcome of this, all right?" She remained silent. The soul sect's master continued, "If you interfere and break the rules, it won't be a good thing for you. Moreover, if both of us stop abiding by the rules, the soul sect will cease to exist, but the ancient sword sect will vanish completely as well. What do you think?" She fell silent for a short while and walked away. It didn't take long for her to vanish from their vision, but her voice drifted over slowly. "If any of you interfere, then I guarantee that I'll turn Eternal Kingdom upside down." A long period of silence filled the area. Suddenly, the soul sect's master waved his right hand slightly, and the black all immediately descended beside the soul exalt. The soul sect's master turned around and vanished into the sky. The soul exalt was absolutely excited as he gazed at the black all. A super divine treasure. The soul all. It was one of the few super divine treasures in Eternal Kingdom. The Soul Sect's master's intentions were absolutely clear. The young girl went to the sky above the ancient sword sect and looked at the sect down below. "Show yourself." A woman in a red dress appeared behind her. She spoke indifferently. "You saw everything?" The woman in a red dress nodded. The young girl said, "There are some rules that I too must abide by. If I don't, they won't. At that time, even if I destroy the Soul Sect, he and the Ancient Sword Sect will be annihilated. I've made them abide by some rules again, but I too cannot interfere in the battle." The woman in a red dress replied softly, "That's more than enough." The petite young girl fell silent for a long time and said, "I'm leaving for some time. I'll leave him in your care." The woman in a red dress didn't say anything in response. The young girl added, "Don't offend that young girl within him. She isn't ordinary, and she has no ill intent toward him. Just that is enough." The woman in a red dress spoke solemnly, "Who's that young girl?" The petite young girl shook her head. "I don't know, but she should be someone from the ancient times or even much earlier. Lately, I've noticed that the old geezers from years ago are gradually showing themselves. Chaotic times are upon us." As she spoke, she shot a glance down below and left. It didn't take long for her to vanish into the sky. A long time later, the woman in a red dress left. In the ancient sword sect, everything remained normal. At Yang Ye's abode, in the primordial pagoda, Yang Yi was still cultivating. His body was at the five-world realm, his cultivation was at the five-world realm, and his sword domain had improved tremendously. Could be said that he was at his peak in every aspect. His peak represented a bottleneck. Now he was truly at a bottleneck. His body and cultivation were impossible to improve further for now. The only thing he could do was focus on cultivating his sword techniques, secret techniques, and control over his divine treasures. Especially Executor. 90% of Executor was unsealed now. While its strength wasn't at its greatest, it couldn't be compared to the past either. Now, he had to truly grasp control over it and bring forth all its might. Of course, besides cultivating, he had to do something else. It was to play with Chi Bidian. Moreover, he would practice with his sword after every session with her, because she would frequently give him some guidance. He benefited tremendously from that. Chi Bidian's guidance truly allowed Yang Yi to benefit tremendously. Some of her insights and pointers were absolutely useful to me. Moreover, he was improving rapidly in all aspects under her guidance. Most importantly, his outlook on things had been raised significantly because of her. On this day, Yang Yi finished playing with her and went to practice with his sword. Chi Bidian had just lost. She'd lost on purpose. She felt that she'd won so many times and should take a loss. So, she intentionally exposed a few mistakes, and Yang Yi had naturally noticed them. So, he went along with it and won. Once he won, Yang Yi roared with laughter like an overjoyed child. Chi Bidian's vanity was absolutely satisfied by this. She was very happy, extremely happy, when she saw Yang Yi training again. In her joy, Chi Bidian said, "Your flying swords and sword techniques are lagging behind a little. I'll teach you a move. Wanna learn it?" Yang Yi was stunned speechless. Yang Yi was overjoyed. It was a truly pleasant surprise. Would Chi Bidian teach him trash? Absolutely not, because she didn't even think highly of super divine treasures. Something that could occupy her mind was absolutely amazing. While he was overjoyed inside, Yang Yi remained quite calm on the outside. He couldn't allow it to show at a time like this, or she would look down on him. Yang Yi acted stunned for a moment, and then he walked over to her and smiled. "What is it?" She sat on the steps outside the house. "A sword technique." Yang Yi was quite surprised. "You know sword techniques?" She replied, "It's just a single move. Felt pretty good, so I committed it to memory. I'd almost forgotten it, but after I saw you training, I recalled it again." Yang Yi was at a loss for words. Chi Bidian said, "The Hell Sphere. The Hell Sphere." Yang Yi frowned slightly. "A sword technique?" She nodded. "It's pretty good, and it even injured me. Hell Sphere is creating a sphere of hell. Similar to your sword domain, but different at the same time. Do you want to learn it?" Yang Yi hurriedly nodded. I do. Chi Bidian nodded slightly. Hell sphere is to create a sphere of space around you. It's like a miniaturized version of your sword domain. You just have to shrink your sword domain to the point it only covers the area you stand on. Yang Yi quickly asked. And then, she continued, now that you have your sphere, it's time to create hell. Your sword cultivators use sword energy, right? Yang Yi nodded. Of course, Chi Bidian said. So, just madly release your sword intent and sword energy. But remember that they must not exceed the sphere you've created. They must remain within that sphere. If you can accomplish that, then you've cultivated the technique successfully. Yang Yi was stunned, and he wondered if that was all. Chi Bidian said, You think it's very easy? Yang Yi smiled embarrassedly. It should be, right? She shrugged. Why don't you give it a try? Yang Yi went to the side, activated his sword domain, and started to shrink it. It didn't take long for it to form a sphere around him. After that, he did as he said and madly released his sword intent and sword energy. However, as soon as they emerged, they shot out of that sphere. Yang Yi was stunned speechless. Chi Bidian gestured for him to continue. Yang Yi took a deep breath. This time, he grew a little more serious as he continued releasing his sword intent and sword energy. In the beginning, they remained within the sphere, but as more and more of them emerged from him, he started to lose control of them. A short while later, they escaped the sphere again. This time, Yang Yi had a solemn expression on his face, because he noticed that it wasn't an easy task. It was like filling a bottle with water, and the water overflowed naturally at some point. Yet now, Chi Bidian wanted him to ceaselessly release his sword intent and sword energy within the sphere but stop it from overflowing. In the beginning, it sounded like an easy task, but once he tried to accomplish it, he noticed that it wasn't just difficult. Chi Bidian spoke indifferently. Didn't you say it was easy? Go on. Yang Yi smiled embarrassedly and walked over to her before asking humbly for guidance. Little Chi, I was wrong. Please guide me. She glanced at him and said, Do you know why it's so difficult? Yang Yi shook his head. She said, Because it's a law of nature. Of course, that isn't the real reason. The real reason is... She paused for a moment and continued, I don't know. Yang Yi was flabbergasted. Chi Bidian added, Just try again and I'll try to figure it out. Yang Ye's face darkened. Seriously. Yang Yi didn't refuse and just activated the sword domain again, and then he started trying again. Just like that, after doing it 3 more times, Chi Bidian told him to stop. Yang Yi stood before her and listened in silence. Chi Bidian said, I know what's the problem. There are 2. Firstly, your control of your sword domain isn't sufficient. Simply speaking, it isn't strong enough so it can't suppress your sword intent and sword energy. The second reason is that you're not sufficiently focused. You must be very, very focused. Your sword domain sphere is like a bottle while your sword intent and sword energy are the water. You must put them all inside while acting as the lid. You must hold the lid tight, and only then will you be able to truly suppress them. Yang Yi hurriedly asked, What happens after that? Chi Bidian smiled. At that time, the owner of this technique used it against me. I was injured by it. Of course, I killed him, and I did it with one hand. Yang Ye's face darkened. What the heck is she trying to say? Are you saying I wouldn't be a match for you even if I succeed at cultivating this technique? However, he was never a match for her anyway. Chi Bidian stood up. A qualitative transformation. Once your sword intent and sword energy are condensed countless times, they will undergo a qualitative transformation, and it's a terrifying transformation. It's like blowing air into a person's body, and that person explodes after some time. Yang Ye's face was quite unsightly. So, will I explode in the process too? She thought for a moment. I'm not certain, but it's possible. Of course, it may not happen as well. Yang Yi was at a loss for words. Meanwhile, Chi Bidian walked over to Yang Yi and spoke seriously. If you can accomplish that, the area within your sword domain sphere will be hell that takes the lives of all who get close. Of course, it all depends on you. I'm gonna play with Lei Lin. Have fun. She waved her hand, and a rattan ball flew into her grasp. And then she went to the side and started kicking it. Yang Yi had quite a bitter expression on his face. Damn it. She doesn't seem really reliable. Sword domain sphere? Hell sphere? It really wasn't very reliable. However, Yang Yi felt that it was possible. So, to do it or not to do it? After thinking for a while, Yang Yi decided to do it. He decided to give it a try. Yang Yi took a deep breath. He didn't return to the cultivation room and just remained outside the bamboo house. Because if any mishaps occurred, he felt safer knowing Chi Bidian was here. At the very least, she wouldn't just let him die. Yang Yi walked off to the side and activated his sword domain. After that, he started to condense it and release his sword intent and sword energy. It wasn't too bad in the beginning. All his sword intent and sword energy remained within the sphere, but as time passed, the sword domain sphere was gradually losing control of the sword energy and sword intent. At this moment, he couldn't stop because his sword energy and sword intent hadn't undergone a qualitative transformation. He had to continue. Yang Yi took a deep breath and continued releasing both sword intent and sword energy. But this time he slowed it down. Such things couldn't be rushed, and they had to be taken slow, especially when he was just starting out. Meanwhile, Chi Bidian glanced at Yang Yi and muttered softly, "I didn't misremember anything, right?" "Yes, I probably didn't." She seemed to be slightly lacking in confidence and hurriedly went back to playing. Meanwhile, Yang Yi went on condensing it all. Unfortunately, 2 hours later he failed once more. Moreover, he suffered backlash from it. The backlash from his own sword intent and sword energy actually blasted him away. Fortunately, Chi Bidian had hurriedly lent him a hand and helped him escape calamity. She said seriously, "It's fine. Take it slow. I'm certain you'll succeed." Yang Yi was quite moved when he heard her. At least she had a heart. After resting for a short while, Yang Yi continued. This time he had more experience and he took it slow from the very beginning. Previously, he tried to instantly fill the bottle, and he knew he couldn't control that. So, he started to slow down and take it one step at a time. This time, he lasted much longer. Yang Yi gradually noticed that his sword intent and sword energy were starting to undergo a qualitative transformation. It was very subtle, but it was transforming, because he could sense it clearly within his sword domain. Yang Yi was overjoyed when he sensed this. It was really transforming. However, it grew increasingly dangerous for him, because he noticed that he was on the verge of losing control of it. Or it should be said that the energy they contained had started to pose a threat to him. Fortunately, Chi Bidian wasn't too far away. Otherwise, he wouldn't dare to continue. Sweat gradually covered Yang Ye's entire face. However, Yang Ye's sword intent and sword energy were transforming within the sphere, and the space around him was starting to tremble. It was very unstable. Chi Bidian shot a glance at Yang Yi and was quite lacking in confidence. She was afraid that Yang Yi would die. But Yang Yi didn't cause his own death. As he gradually condensed and suppressed them, sword energy and sword intent filled the sphere, and they had become completely different now. It was like an enhanced version of sword intent and sword energy. A true qualitative transformation. Yang Yi was overjoyed, and he pressed on. He carefully released his sword energy and sword intent, and then carefully suppressed them to keep them from leaving the sword domain sphere. Just like that, this cycle continued incessantly. Chi Bidian had stopped playing. She just sat there and gazed at Yang Yi with curiosity on her face. Finally, a long time later, Yang Yi finally sensed his true limit. After that, something happened. With Yang Ye's sword domain sphere at its center, the space in the surroundings actually started to vanish inch by inch. It truly vanished, and it hadn't just been shattered. At this moment, Yang Yi felt like he was full of strength. He felt like he could destroy the world and instantly annihilate anything. So, he gazed at Chi Bidian with a provocative look in his eyes. At this moment, Yang Yi had forgotten what Chi Bidian had said. The owner of the Hell Sphere had only been able to injure her with it, and she'd annihilated that person with just one hand. If Yang Yi still remembered those words, he would absolutely not act like this. Unfortunately, he'd grown a little too overconfident right now. At this moment, He felt invincible. Qi Bidian glanced at Yang Yi. I don't want to lost my opponent in Gamoku. Ha ha. Yang Yi roared madly with laughter, and he laughed for a while before he looked at her. Let's fight! Bang! As soon as he said that, an explosion resounded, and Yang Yi was blasted away. As for his sword domain sphere and the sword intent and sword energy within it, all of them had instantly vanished without a trace. Yang Yi flew extremely far away. He flew all the way out of the sword sect. At a mountain wall outside the sword sect, there was a pitch-black hole there. A long time passed before a pair of hands emerged from it. A short while later, a head emerged. It was Yang Yi. Just like that, Yang Yi crawled out slowly. He was partially paralyzed. At this moment, Yang Ye's mind cleared up. He recalled what he'd done, and it was the first time he'd felt so stupid. Absolutely stupid. Yang Yi returned to the bamboo house, and Qi Bidian was still there. She glanced at him and asked, "Shall we continue?" Yang Yi quickly shook his head. "No, not at all." She walked over to him and spoke in a very serious manner. "You're not weak. It's I who am too strong, so don't feel dejected. After all, I even killed that guy from all those years ago with such ease." Yang Ye's face darkened. Is she comforting me or threatening me? Qi Bidian sat at the side and continued. I was watching earlier, and it was really not bad. However, you haven't mastered the technique, and you need that to use it in battle. Understand. Master it. Yang Yi nodded. I understand. Just as Qi Bidian had said, he wasn't very skilled in using it, so he couldn't unleash it in an instant. So he had to continue training, painstakingly. So after that, while nothing occurred at the ancient sword sect, Yang Yi remained training in the primordial pagoda. In another world, a woman stood on a vast river, and there was a young girl standing in the distance. She had a white and fluffy little fellow on her shoulder, and there were 3 huge ships in front of them. Warships. 3 powerful warships. Every one of these warships had a long flag on it, and there was a red circle on the flag. Not too far away from the ships was an island. The young girl stood on the ocean while wearing a strange thing on her head. The strange thing was making noises, and if one listened carefully, one would notice that the sounds of passion and fervor were coming from it. She had a very good sense of rhythm as she stepped forward lightly, causing numerous ripples to undulate in all directions. Meanwhile, the white and fluffy little fellow on her shoulder was wearing the same thing as the young girl. She kept blinking in a very rhythmic manner, and she was holding a rattle drum. She shook it from time to time. Thud, thud, thud. Suddenly, a middle-aged man in blue uniform appeared on the deck. The middle-aged man was holding a black spyglass to observe the young girl. When he saw her floating above the water, he was shocked and couldn't believe his eyes. He hurriedly took another look, and a long time passed before he spoke softly. Magic? Sorcery? The young girl shook her head and moved faster while humming from time to time. The river flows east. The Big Dipper is the star to watch. When there's injustice on my way, I roar and smash the dragon and ox to death. The little fellow on her shoulder kept shaking the rattle drum. The middle-aged man on the warship put his spyglass away and fell silent for a short while, and then he spoke in broken Chinese. Must be Chinese tricks. Forget her, full speed ahead. This island is ours. After that, he stopped speaking in Chinese. Meanwhile, the warships sped up toward the island. Eternal border. The desolate race. In a hall, the junior patriarch of the desolate race, Huang Ying, sat before a desk, and there were numerous scrolls laid out on it. Meanwhile, an ethereal figure suddenly appeared before him. Huang Ying stopped and asked softly. He refused. The ethereal figure nodded slightly. As you expected, he didn't leave, and he's leading those sword cultivators against the Soul Sect. Huang Ying sighed softly and didn't say anything. The ethereal figure hesitated for a moment and said, Junior Patriarch, according to the information we've collected, the Soul Sect isn't ordinary at all, and they have formed an agreement with the other powers of Eternal Kingdom to fight our desolate race in the future. Fight our desolate race? Huang Ying shook his head and smiled. That's quite interesting. The ethereal figure replied solemnly. You must not underestimate them. Huang Ying smiled. Of course I won't underestimate them or be careless. Right, have we figured out the strength of the soul sect? The ethereal figure replied, the strongest is their sect master. He's quite mysterious, and we can't find out his true identity or origins. He possesses a super divine treasure, the soul all. If Xianxia's executor is included, there are 5 known super divine treasures in Eternal Kingdom. Xianxia's executor cannot be considered as a true super divine treasure. At the very least, it can't until it's fully unsealed. But the other 4 are true super divine treasures. Moreover, besides Xianxia's executor, all the other 4 may be pointed at our desolate race. So, we must take precautions. Huang Ying nodded slightly. I understand. You may leave now. The ethereal figure bowed slightly and left. Meanwhile, Huang Ying added, once you return to Eternal Kingdom, pay attention to the ancient sword sect and Brother Yang. Don't refuse his requests. The ethereal figure hesitated for a moment and said, Junior Patriarch, allow me to be honest. We shouldn't interfere in this. Moreover, if we interfere, the situation will become worse for him once Eternal Kingdom finds out. At that time, they will have an excuse to openly attack him. Huang Ying fell silent for a long time and said, isn't that good? The more chaotic it is over there, the more beneficial it will be for us. The ethereal figure was stunned, and then it cupped its hands and left. Once the ethereal figure left, Huang Ying closed his eyes slowly. Sorry, I'm Huang Ying, but I'm also the Desolate Race's Junior Patriarch. Eternal Kingdom, the Central Region. The Central Region was the core of the Eternal Kingdom, and it was where the head of the Divine Vein resided. It was the most prosperous area in Eternal Kingdom, and it was the Xing clan's territory, and where the Eternal Lord resided. On this day, Xing Biqing went to the restricted area of the Xing clan. Actually, the restricted area was just a vegetable garden. Even the Xing clan's patriarch couldn't visit this garden. All sorts of fruits and vegetables were planted here. A middle-aged man was sprinkling fertilizer in the garden, and he grinned upon noticing Xing Biqing. Wait a while. I'm almost done. Xing Biqing bowed slightly and stood respectfully at the side. Around 2 hours later, the middle-aged man led her into a small courtyard. He sat before a stone table and took a sip from the teacup on the table. The middle-aged man put down the cup and smiled. While it isn't top-rate tea, it was planted with my own hands, so it's the best for me. It feels great to drink it. He gazed at Xing Biqing and continued, you rarely come to visit me, so tell me, what is it? Xing Biqing sat before him. Uncle, why are you letting the Soul Sect do as they please? He shook his head. You're wrong. I'm not. Xing Biqing glanced at him and spoke softly. If they didn't receive your permission, they wouldn't dare to treat the ancient sword sect like that. The middle-aged man smiled. Are you here for that kid? She spoke solemnly. He's a friend of mine. The middle-aged man replied. He's been in the limelight lately. Right, I know a little about him. He is pretty good. She gazed at him and pleaded. Uncle, can you spare him? The middle-aged man smiled. You still don't understand. This world has its own rules, and there are some rules that we cannot violate. Once we do that, the rules will be lost, and this world will be in chaos. Just like when a wolf wants to eat some sheep, what would the wolf do if we tried to save the sheep? Let it starve to death? We can't do that. He stood up slowly. If we break the rules, this world will fall into chaos. Xing Biqing fell silent for a long time and said, Uncle, are we really going to join in and split the ancient sword sect with the others? The middle-aged man glanced at her and said, if the ancient sword sect is more useful to us than the soul sect, then I will choose them. Just like when I suppressed the soul sect and prohibited them from emerging into the world. Yet now, the soul sect is more useful to us. So, I chose the soul sect. He looked up at the sky and continued, the useful remains. Understand. The useful remains. Xing Biqing fell silent for a long time and said, he is very talented, is he not? The middle-aged man shook his head. I would be willing to wait at any other time, but we don't have much time left anymore. Xianxia glanced at him and said, "Uncle, I don't want to be the clan's patriarch anymore." The middle-aged man turned around to look at her. "Because of him?" She nodded. "He is my friend, and I'm a member of the Xing clan. I don't want to choose between him and the clan in the future." The middle-aged man shook his head. "You're not very mature." Xianxia smiled. "Perhaps. I just want to focus on my cultivation now." The middle-aged man nodded. "I respect your decision." Xianxia bowed slightly to him and left. The middle-aged man continued planting his vegetables. The Yi clan. Yi Zhibei was the patriarch of the Yi clan now, but her authority wasn't that great. Strength always decided things, and authority was given proportionately to strength. Yi Zhibei went to the rear mountains of the Yi estate, and she met the Yi clan's ancestor there. The Yi clan's ancestor was the true master of the Yi clan. Yi Zhibei walked over to him, and the latter said, "Sit." She didn't sit and remained standing instead. The Yi clan's ancestor smiled. "You're here for Yiyang?" She nodded. He said, "Go on." Yi Zhibei fell silent for a short while and said, "I know that the Yi clan would never get itself swept into such conflict, and it would never ever help the ancient sword sect. But I want the Yi clan to give up the benefits of this." The Yi clan's ancestor suddenly asked, "Do you know what the benefits of it are?" Yi Zhibei nodded. "I do. If the ancient sword sect is destroyed, we will get a quarter of its wealth. There will be at least a few 100,000 world crystals, and at least 5 to 7 divine treasures. Besides that, there is that spirit vein, and the soul sect will have to compensate us with at least 30,000 world crystals for that. All of those aren't even the main point. The main point is we can establish our forces in the West region and expand there. Moreover, once we occupy some territory over there, our Yi clan's profits will increase by at least 30%. The Yi clan's ancestor nodded slightly. "You're correct, but you do not know about something. Once the ancient sword sect is destroyed, the soul sect will join us, and will have a better chance against the desolate race with their help." He gazed at Yi Zhibei and continued, "Of course, you can tell me your reasons for supporting that kid. If it's because you're friends, then I'll be very disappointed." Yi Zhibei fell silent for a long time, and then she looked him in the eyes. "Everything I said was based on success, and we will get all of that if it's successful. But ancestor, what if they fail?" The Yi clan's ancestor fell silent this time. Yi Zhibei sat by his side. "Ancestor, everything comes with its risks. Of course, there is no gain without risk, but it depends on the situation, right?" He played with 2 jade green balls in his hands while he said, "Go on." She continued, "Yiyang is Yang Yi. I'm sure you're aware of that. But you seem to have forgotten something, and it's that he has a sprite progenitor." The sprite progenitor. The Yi clan's ancestor stopped playing with those balls when he heard her. She grinned and said, "Ancestor, do you know what the heart is?" He glanced at her and chuckled. "What? Are you trying to discuss the Tao with me?" She shook her head. "I've been in contact with him, and do you know what I think of him?" He smiled. "Tell me." Yi Zhibei said, "He's someone who has a high regard for feelings and relationships. If he thinks it's right, he will do it. Just like when he rushed into War City to save his friends. He doesn't act based on his own interests. Take the ancient sword sect, for example. He can leave, but he still stayed. Is it because he covets the position of sect master? Or the sect's treasures? I don't think so. Authority is worthless to him. As for the sect's treasures, he has super divine treasures and divine treasures. So the ancient sword sect's treasures aren't important to him either." She stood up slowly and looked ahead as she spoke. "His heart. He always follows his heart. That is why Xianxia and I are willing to be friends with him. Because we are certain he won't stab us in the back. Moreover, so long as we need help, he will definitely come to our aid." She shook her head and chuckled at this point. "But we can't do the same for him, because we have too much to worry about. The first thing we consider can never be our own relationships. It is our interests instead. We must always think if it will be beneficial for our clans." The Yi clan's ancestor remained silent. Yi Zhibei continued, "He's a sword cultivator who fully follows his heart. Perhaps he isn't a good person, but he's absolutely not a bad person. She gazed at the Yi clan's ancestor and said, Ancestor, I want to continue being his friend, and I want to lead the Yi clan to continue being his friend. Of course, the Yi clan doesn't belong to me, it belongs to everyone. But if it's possible, even if we don't help him, we shouldn't beat him when he's down. Alright? The Yi clan's ancestor glanced at her and smiled. You've spoken much more than you ever do. Yi Zhibei didn't say another word and just waited for his decision. Yi Zhibei's ancestor gazed at the clouds for a long time. You can make the decisions for the Yi clan. Just do what you think is best for the clan. Yi Zhibei was visibly relieved. She bowed to him and walked away. Meanwhile, the Yi clan's ancestor closed his eyes slowly. That kid's backing isn't ordinary either. If Yang Yi didn't have any backing, everything would be pointless. Because killing him and the ancient sword sect would be absolutely easy. Unfortunately, Yang Yi had backing, and it was extremely powerful backing too. Thus, they had to abide by the rules when dealing with him. Once they did that, everything that was set in stone before this was full of variables again. The ancient sword sect. In the primordial pagoda. After days of bitter cultivation, Yang Ye's sword domain sphere was pretty good now. Presently, he could unleash it with ease, but it wasn't quite stable, and the slightest mistake would end in him injuring himself. While there was a certain amount of danger, it was very, very powerful. It was extremely terrifying, and it could be said that ordinary Lord Realm experts wouldn't be able to endure it upon getting close to him. Not to mention others, even he couldn't really endure it. Yang Yi didn't continue training and left the primordial pagoda. Outside the pagoda, the soul sect didn't show signs of attacking yet. As he stood outside the main hall, Yang Yi fell silent as he gazed at the darkness around the sect. Wait for death to arrive? Yang Yi shook his head. He felt that this wouldn't do, because the pressure was growing for the entire sect, and it would strike a huge blow to their overall morale. Yang Yi gazed at the darkness for a long time, and then he said, Summon the elite disciples. A short while later, the elite disciples arrived before Yang Yi, and all of them had a divine treasure. These divine treasures were a part of the sect's reserves. Besides the elite disciples, Nether Maiden and the others appeared behind Yang Yi. Yang Yi glanced at them. Come with me. Yang Yi transformed into a ray of light that shot up into the sky. Rays of light followed closely behind him. Nether Maiden and the others hurried after him as well. A short while later, they arrived before the darkness, and a wisp of viciousness flashed through Yang Ye's eyes as he gazed at the dark encirclement around the sect. A moment later, the sheath on his waist shook, and then Executor shot forward. Meanwhile, the soul sect's super divine treasure, the Soul All, emerged from the darkness. The Soul All slammed itself against Executor. A battle between super divine treasures. As soon as they collided, the sky shook, and waves of violent energy raged like a storm. Meanwhile, Yang Yi appeared behind Executor, and then he grabbed it and shot into the darkness. Nether Maiden's expression changed slightly, and she was about to charge in when an explosion resounded from within the darkness. After that, countless rays of sword energy rippled out before the pitch-black encirclement shattered before their eyes. It didn't take long for the darkness to gradually vanish. The formation had been destroyed. It had been destroyed by force. Yang Ye's strength wasn't the same anymore. After all, even Executor had 90% of its strength now. While its strength wasn't fully unsealed, it couldn't be compared to the past. A group of mysterious black-robed figures stood before Yang Yi, and they were led by the Soul Sect's Exalt. Besides that, the two black-robed figures who'd hunted him the other day were behind the Soul Exalt. The woman in a black dress was by their side too. Furthermore, there were three black-clothed figures with pitch-black spears standing behind the group, and they were souls without bodies. The Soul Exalt stared at Yang Yi. He hadn't expected this fellow to dare make the first move. Yang Yi had actually made the first move. Fortunately, the Soul Sect was prepared. Yang Yi swung his sword. He didn't want to waste his breath and was about to attack. Ah! Suddenly, numerous shrill cries resounded from down below. Yang Ye's expression changed as he swiftly turned to look. The ancient sword sect was under attack. The Soul Exalt suddenly smiled, as expected of the #1 organization of assassins in Eternal Kingdom. They really are efficient. Assassins. Meanwhile, a voice resounded in Yang Ye's mind. It's Heaven's Avatar. An organization of assassins that's rather mysterious in Eternal Kingdom. They usually keep a very low profile and do not act against the large powers. I didn't expect them to help the Soul Sect. Yang Yi turned around to gaze at Nether Maiden, and the latter nodded slightly. We'll deal with them. As soon as she finished speaking, she turned around and entered the sect with the others. Yang Yi was very confident in them. He turned around to gaze at the Soul Exalt's group. Suddenly, something unexpected occurred. A translucent figure suddenly appeared in the space behind him, and then a ray of cold light shot toward Yang Ye's nape. An assassin. Yang Ye's eyes narrowed slightly, and he reacted very quickly. A moment later, he turned around and swung his sword. Bang! An explosion resounded, and the translucent figure vanished. Yang Yi frowned slightly. A Lord Realm assassin. It was obvious that the Soul Sect had really gone all out this time. Yang Yi ignored the assassin and gazed at the Soul Exalt's group. The Soul Exalt laughed coldly. The pleasant surprises aren't over. As soon as he said that, a man with a mask over his face appeared on Yang Ye's right. The man held a saber, and his saber intent was at the Lord Realm. A powerful Lord Realm saber cultivator. Meanwhile, a woman with a golden spear suddenly appeared on Yang Ye's left. She wore a tight black dress and a veil, so her appearance was completely obstructed from view. Another Lord Realm expert. The Soul Sect was very well aware that only such Lord Realm experts posed a threat to Yang Yi. They had to be those who were truly strong in the Lord Realm. Thus, existences in the Lord Realm who could even surmount their realms of cultivation had been sent here today. Yang Yi glanced at them and smiled. You're not from the Soul Sect, right? They remained silent. Yang Yi nodded. Looks like the other powers can't wait anymore, and you plan to take matters into your own hands. Meanwhile, the saber cultivator suddenly vanished on the spot, and then the space above Yang Yi was sliced open. A terrifying ray of saber energy surged down from above like a waterfall. A dense amount of pressure instantly assaulted his head. It didn't take long for the saber to arrive just half an inch away from Yang Ye's head. However, a sword slammed against its blade. Bang! An explosion resounded. Yang Yi and the saber cultivator immediately moved apart from each other, and they moved around 300 m back. As soon as Yang Yi stopped himself, a powerful aura swept toward him. It was the spear-wielding woman. Her spear was like a bolt of lightning that carried the force of the world. Yang Yi hurriedly stabilized himself, and then the sword gourd shook violently while 2 flying swords shot out from it. The woman was instantly pushed back, but the saber cultivator charged at Yang Yi again. The other elite disciples of the ancient sword sect were about to lend him a hand, but the Soul Exalt gave the command, and the other experts behind him charged at those elite disciples. They were overwhelming their opponents with numbers. So, the elite disciples were instantly suppressed. Meanwhile, Yang Yi was gradually pushed into a disadvantage in his battle. Obviously, they weren't ordinary experts. It made sense because they knew how terrifying Yang Yi was, so how could they send ordinary experts to give their lives away? The Soul Exalt didn't attack because an aura was locked onto him. If he attacked, the owner of that aura would attack. It could be said that they were keeping each other busy. The Soul Exalt glanced at the black-robed figures by his side. They nodded slightly, and then 2 powerful auras locked onto Yang Yi. Yang Ye's figure stiffened slightly from this, and that caused him to be blasted away by the saber cultivator and woman. Meanwhile, the black-robed figures vanished on the spot. At this moment, Yang Yi sensed unprecedented danger. Yang Ye's eyes narrowed slightly, and then his figure turned ethereal. The sword domain sphere. Bang! The sound of something shattering resounded. Both the black-robed men, the saber cultivator, and the woman were blasted away. What? The Soul Exalt gazed at Yang Yi. At this moment, an extremely powerful wave of sword intent and sword energy surrounded Yang Yi. Just a moment ago, All four of those Lord Realm experts had been instantly blasted away upon approaching Yang Yi. The saber cultivator seemed like his entire body had been pierced by swords and was covered in holes. The woman's reaction was the fastest, so she'd retreated the fastest too. Thus, she was in a comparatively better state, but she wasn't lightly injured either. She'd lost her right arm. It was those two experts from the Soul Sect who'd suffered the least injuries. Both of them were the strongest here, so they'd retreated as soon as Yang Yi unleashed the sword domain sphere. It was why they'd suffered the least injuries. But at this moment, they were extremely shocked. At that instant, they had sensed intense danger. If they had gone too close just now, they would have been severely injured even if they could avoid death. Fear. At this moment, all of them felt intense fear toward Yang Yi. Yang Yi deactivated the sword domain sphere. While it was extremely powerful, it was difficult to control. The slightest mistake would kill him first. Once he deactivated it, Yang Yi immediately activated Flash, and then a few flying swords flashed. The others' expressions changed drastically, and they retreated. But they weren't the targets of those flying swords. Those flying swords were aimed at the experts from the Soul Sect who were in battle with the ancient Sword Sect's elite disciples. The sudden arrival of these flying swords took those experts by surprise, and a few heads instantly shot into the air. Blood sprayed like fountains. The Soul Exalt's face turned gloomy from the sight of this. What? All four of you aren't enough to take him down. Meanwhile, the woman suddenly shouted with fury, and then her spear shot at Yang Yi like a bolt of lightning. Behind the spear was numerous bolts of dazzling lightning. It shattered everything before it. The heavily injured saber cultivator didn't attack again. He just vanished into the sky. He was just here to help. He wasn't here to risk his life. Yang Yi gazed at the spear that was surging in his direction, and then he laughed coldly. Meanwhile, Executor shot forward from his grasp. Hiss! A sharp and ear-piercing sound of something bearing sliced open resounded. Executor instantly sliced open the spear with ease, and it didn't slow down at all as it continued toward the woman. The woman's expression changed slightly. Fortunately, those two experts from the Soul Sect suddenly appeared before her. After that, two rays of powerful soul energy rippled out and pushed Executor back. Yang Yi stretched out his right hand, and Executor immediately flew into his grasp. The fear in the woman's eyes turned into solemnness at this moment. Yang Yi's strength was much stronger than she'd imagined. Yang Yi glanced at the experts from the Soul Sect, and he was about to attack when the space before him warped strangely. The space domain. Yang Yi's eyes narrowed slightly. He was about to counterattack when a wave of a sweet scent assaulted him, and then a woman appeared before him. Nether Maiden. Nether Maiden glanced at Yang Yi. There are 2 Lord Realm Assassins and 7-5 World Realm Assassins down there. Yang Yi replied solemnly. Go down there. I can deal with the battle up here. Nether Maiden shook her head slightly. The others can deal with them. She looked forward as she spoke. We weren't able to kill each other that day, so let's decide who dies today. As soon as she finished speaking, she raised her hands slightly, and then the space before her gradually turned ethereal. Yang Yi didn't pay any further attention to Nether Maiden and the woman with the space domain. He was confident in Nether Maiden because even he didn't dare to guarantee that he could defeat Nether Maiden. Yang Yi gazed at the 2 experts from the Soul Sect and the spear-wielding woman. Yang Yi walked slowly in their direction, and his sword intent rippled out from him like the tide. All 3 of them had extremely solemn expressions on their faces, and they didn't dare act carelessly at all. Meanwhile, 3 sword howls resounded, and then 3 flying swords suddenly shot forward at them. At the same time, Yang Yi vanished on the spot. A powerful sword howl tore through space. Yang Yi's strength was being enhanced by Flash right now, so his speed was many times faster than before. It wasn't just his speed. His strength had been enhanced tremendously as well. The flying swords were naturally unable to pose a threat to the black-robed men, and they were immediately blasted away upon approaching them. But Yang Yi had arrived before them. The sword domain swept out. Yang Yi's sword descended. 13 overlap swings with the sword domain. As the final swing descended, The space in the surroundings couldn't endure its strength anymore and instantly collapsed. Meanwhile, the relatively weaker woman was blasted away while defending herself from Yang Ye's flying sword. The black-robed men from the Soul Sect didn't retreat or try to dodge it. Two vortexes of souls suddenly appeared before them, and then numerous souls rippled out from them. Countless souls. These souls forcefully stopped Yang Ye's powerful attack, and they even devoured all the sword energy and sword intent around Yang Ye's sword. Bang! A muffled explosion resounded, and Yang Yi was blasted away with his sword. Yang Yi stopped over 1 kilometer away. At this moment, the space in a huge area around him was covered in souls, an endless swarm of souls. Meanwhile, a white-haired old man standing far away in space glanced at Yang Ye's figure within the vortex of souls, and he said, "Just that won't be enough to kill him. You go give them a hand." As soon as he gave the order, a pitch-black colossus soundlessly appeared behind him. At the same time, in the primordial pagoda, Chi suddenly looked up while kicking her ball. She frowned slightly and said, "What the heck?" In the primordial pagoda, Chi frowned slightly and looked up at the sky. Actually, she was looking outside, and she muttered softly, "The Abyss Lion." Layli asked curiously, "Big sister, you recognize that big guy?" Chi nodded slightly. "It tried to attack me when I passed by its territory." Lei asked, "What happened?" Chi replied, "And then its territory became mine. However, I didn't kill it because it is a descendant of that existence." Lei blinked. "But it's trying to kill Big Brother Yang." Chi smiled. "It's not trying to kill me, so what do I care?" Lei was stunned speechless. Chi glanced at Yang Yi and spoke softly. "Allow me to give you a friendly reminder. That fellow isn't ordinary. Besides Arya's bloodline that can firmly suppress it, other demon beasts cower before it. Especially that dragon in here. It's a bane of dragons, and the bane of many demon beasts. So, don't let them go outside and die." She pulled Lei to the side to play with her. Nothing was more important than Gamoku and soccer to Chi outside the primordial pagoda. At this moment, Yang Yi sensed the powerful aura of that demon beast from within the encirclement of countless souls. He shot a glance to the side, and he saw a pitch-black colossus charging at him from there. As it charged at him, the entire sky shook. It couldn't endure the colossus' strength at all. But Yang Yi couldn't dodge at all because there were countless souls around him. Meanwhile, the Abyss Lion was getting closer and closer. Now, Yang Yi could see its rough outline. It was huge. It had a horn on its head and an especially long mouth that seemed like it housed a pitch-black vortex. Suddenly, a powerful devouring force enveloped Yang Yi. As soon as it enveloped him, Yang Yi and the space around him actually started to move toward the mouth. It wanted to swallow him alive. Watch out! Even that super divine treasure won't be able to slice it open from the inside. Meanwhile, Chi Bitian's voice resounded in Yang Ye's mind. Yang Ye's face darkened. "Then tell me, how am I supposed to stop myself from being swallowed?" Chi Bitian replied, "You fool! Hit it. It's only truly strong internally, and its outer body is just ordinary." Yang Yi took a deep breath, and then a wave of powerful sword intent and sword energy rippled out from him, and then a ray of sword energy tore through the area. 13 overlap swings with the sword domain. However, it was instantly swallowed upon arriving before the Abyss Lion. It had been swallowed. Yang Yi was stunned speechless. Meanwhile, two powerful auras swept over from behind Yang Yi. Countless souls enveloped Yang Yi like a black snowstorm. A vicious glow flashed through Yang Ye's eyes, and then he waved his sword swiftly, causing rays of sword energy to surge out. Hiss! 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 The sound of something being sliced open resounded throughout the sky. However, the souls simply seemed endless. They madly devoured Yang Ye's sword energy and sword intent, and they tried to devour his sword too. It could be said that if he wasn't holding a super divine treasure, then even a divine treasure would be gone by now. Meanwhile, the Abyss Lion was still eyeing Yang Yi ferociously and was waiting for an opportunity to strike. But it didn't take long for it to suddenly look toward the ancient sword sect. Yang Ye's expression changed drastically from the sight of this. Meanwhile, the abyss lion charged at the sect below. Once it got close to the sect, the entire sect would be sucked into its stomach. Suddenly, something unexpected occurred. A few powerful auras suddenly appeared in the air above the sect. Yang Yi was shocked. More Lord Realm experts. But it only took a moment for him to be stunned. Because he knew the owners of those auras. It was the Grand Elders group that had left the ancient sword sect that day. Yang Yi frowned slightly from the sight of them. They're back? Elder Shui and the others paid no attention to Yang Yi and just charged at the Abyss Lion. They were all at the Lord Realm, and they weren't ordinary Lord Realm experts either, so their powerful auras forced the Abyss Lion away from the sect. But it also aroused the ferocious nature within it. A moment later, a huge mouth that stretched far and wide appeared in the sky above the sect. At the same time, an extremely powerful suction force swept out from it. At this moment, the disciples of the ancient sword sect couldn't stop themselves from shooting up into the air toward the mouth in the sky. Even Elder Shui and the others were barely able to resist it. Elder Shui and the Grand Elder exchanged glances, and then the elders behind them suddenly raised their swords before rays of sword energy flashed through the sky like bolts of lightning. Meanwhile, Elder Shui suddenly shouted with fury, "Thousand sword formation!" As soon as she gave the order, her sword left her grasp, and it was the same for all the other elders here. Besides that, the swords of all the disciples down below shot up into the air as well. In an instant, countless rays of sword energy and sword intent surged into the sky. Elder Shui formed a strange seal with both hands, and then a huge circle of swords appeared before the Abyss Lion. After that, countless rays of sword energy rained down from them. Meanwhile, countless rays of sword energy surged up into the sky from below. However, the Abyss Lion didn't fear them at all. It devoured all the sword energy, and even if some did hit it, they didn't cause any damage to it. Elder Shui's face turned utterly gloomy from the sight of this. Meanwhile, Yang Yi was locked in combat with those two black-robed experts from the Soul Sect, and he couldn't leave to help the others at all. The worst part was that around 20 more black-robed figures had appeared behind the Soul Exalt. All of them didn't carry the aura of the Soul Sect. Obviously, they didn't belong to the Soul Sect. Moreover, all of them were Lord Realm experts. The person who led the group was a Grade 3 Lord Realm expert who held a cane. The other powers had taken action. Meanwhile, they suddenly vanished, and they were in front of Elder Shui's group when they appeared again. They didn't waste their breaths and just attacked. They struck lethal blows. It was utter suppression. At this moment, all the other powers had joined forces, and the ancient sword sect was utterly suppressed. Countless disciples of the sect started to fall. One after the other. The sect was covered in corpses and blood. At this moment, Yang Yi was being kept busy by those two experts from the Soul Sect. While they couldn't kill Yang Yi couldn't kill them either. Their current mission was just to keep Yang Yi busy. So long as they succeeded, the ancient sword sect wouldn't be able to defend itself against the joint forces of the Soul Sect and the other powers. Just like this very moment, the ancient sword sect was being completely crushed. Meanwhile, at the ascension platform within the primordial pagoda, the dragon had gathered all the demons here. It didn't say a single word and just pointed into the sky. The others nodded to display their understanding. Bang! 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 A moment later, numerous terrifying demon auras appeared in the sky. At this moment, everyone's attention was grabbed by them. Demons. Primal demons. All of them returned to their true forms, and they simply blotted out the sky. Especially the primal true dragon. It practically blotted out the entire sky on its own. Meanwhile, the Abyss Lion's gaze instantly descended upon the dragon, and there was undisguised greed and excitement in its eyes. The Abyss Lion. It was a natural bane of the dragons. A very, very long time ago, they survived feeding on dragons. Meanwhile, the dragon's gaze descended onto the Abyss Lion as well. It had sensed the Abyss Lion earlier, and it had chosen the Abyss Lion as its opponent too. Because if this Abyss Lion attacked the others, they wouldn't be able to fight back at all. Arya wasn't here, so he was their leader, and so he had to fight the strongest. At this moment, he actually really missed Arya, because he didn't have to face the strongest opponent when she was here. The dragon didn't hesitate to charge at the Abyss Lion. Meanwhile, the Abyss Lion's eyes were filled with greed and excitement as if a feast was rushing at it. Just like that, they entered into battle. In the primordial pagoda, Chi-Bidian glanced at the dragon and said, "I'm quite surprised." Lei Lin blinked and gazed at her. Chi-Bidian grinned. Logically speaking, it should be afraid upon seeing the natural bane of its existence. However, it's actually not afraid and even dared to make the first move. This dragon is pretty good. Lei Lin blinked. That big guy is terrifying, but I think Big Sister Arya is more terrifying. Arya. Actually, as far as they were concerned, even the most terrifying demon beast wasn't as terrifying as Arya, and they'd been in contact with Arya every single day. It could be said that besides Arya, no other demon beast was terrifying to them. Even the Abyss Lion wasn't that terrifying when compared to Arya. Besides that, they'd been with Yang Yi and Arya for so long, so their characters had been influenced by them. It was fine to lose in battle, but never shrink back from battle. When the dragon thought of the disdain Arya would show him upon finding out that he'd cowered from battle, there was no fear left in his heart. The reason Arya had acknowledged him was because he'd fearlessly protected Snowy. If he didn't even fear death, why should he fear the natural bane of his existence? Once these demon beasts appeared, the situation grew better for the ancient sword sect. But it was only the beginning. The top figures of Eternal Kingdom were watching from afar. Among them were the Xing clan's patriarch, the Lung clan's patriarch, and a mysterious figure in black. It was the leader of Heaven's avatar. Besides that, there were two other figures here. A woman in palace clothes, and a middle-aged man in linen clothes. All the powers out in the open and hidden in the shadows throughout Eternal Kingdom were here.